I was wondering if you'd like to dine with me tomorrow evening.
I would love to. What should I wear?
Something special?
Is this a special occasion?
Yes, darling. It's going to be very special. Which would you prefer? Fancy a restaurant or dinner on a cruise line?
I think I prefer dinner on a cruise line. It would be much more romantic than a restaurant. But I would enjoy either one as long as I'm with you.
That's very nice of you to say so. I feel the same way. And I think you're right. Dining on a cruise line is much more romantic than a restaurant. I was wondering if you'd like to dine with me tomorrow evening.
I would love to. What should I wear?
Something special?
Is this a special occasion?
Yes, darling. It's going to be very special. Which would you prefer? Fancy a restaurant or dinner on a cruise line?
I think I prefer dinner on a cruise line. It would be much more romantic than a restaurant. But I would enjoy either one as long as I'm with you.
That's very nice of you to say so. I feel the same way. And I think you're right. Dining on a cruise line is much more romantic than a restaurant. I was wondering if you'd like to dine with me tomorrow evening.
I would love to. What should I wear?
Something special?
Is this a special occasion?
Yes, darling. It's going to be very special. Which would you prefer? Fancy a restaurant or dinner on a cruise line?
I think I prefer dinner on a cruise line. It would be much more romantic than a restaurant. But I would enjoy either one as long as I'm with you.
That's very nice of you to say so. I feel the same way. And I think you're right. Dining on a cruise line is much more romantic than a restaurant.
I don't know. What do you think?
This gown is from our most recent European collection.
Is that so? But don't you think it's a little long?
Hemlines are a little longer this year than last year.
I see.
What's the occasion?
I don't know, but I think it's something very special.
Well, in my opinion, this is the most beautiful gown in our collection.
It's certainly the most beautiful dress I've ever seen.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit card, thank you. I don't know. What do you think?
This gown is from our most recent European collection.
Is that so? But don't you think it's a little long?
Hemlines are a little longer this year than last year.
I see.
What's the occasion?
I don't know, but I think it's something very special.
Well, in my opinion, this is the most beautiful gown in our collection.
It's certainly the most beautiful dress I've ever seen.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit card, thank you. I don't know. What do you think?
This gown is from our most recent European collection.
Is that so? But don't you think it's a little long?
Hemlines are a little longer this year than last year.
I see.
What's the occasion?
I don't know, but I think it's something very special.
Well, in my opinion, this is the most beautiful gown in our collection.
It's certainly the most beautiful dress I've ever seen.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit card, thank you.
Today, I think it's best if we review adjectives and adverbs. Wouldn't that be better than learning another verb tense? After all, modifiers, a word that means both adjective and adverbs, are as important as verbs, aren't they? Now, did you hear the different things that I just said? I started out by saying, I think it's best if we review adjectives and adverbs. Then I said, wouldn't that be better than learning another verb tense? You see, we've already begun our review. Best, of course, is the superlative form of good. Better is the comparative form. Then I said, knowing about modifiers is as important as knowing about verbs. That is one of the ways that we can compare things that are equal. That's coming up in this lesson. You know, I really do think this will be a productive way to use our time. In fact, this will be more productive than a lot of other things we could do. It's probably the most productive lesson we could study in this unit. Now, what have I done here? Productive is an adjective. More productive is the comparative form of that multi-syllabled adjective. And more than is the phrase that we use very often in comparisons. And the most productive is the superlative form of that adjective. Let's do a quick review of some of the rules that we've already learned about the different forms of adjectives and adverbs. Do you remember the comparative and the superlative forms of adjectives and adverbs? Let's look at adjectives first. Fat. The comparative form is fatter. The superlative form is fattest. Fat, comparative. Fatter, superlative, fattest. Man number 1 is fat. Man number 2 is fatter. When we have two people, things, objects, whatever, to compare, we use the comparative form. Man number 3 is the fattest. He looks like the fatter twin brother of man number 2, doesn't he? So let's go over quickly some of the rules. For short adjectives, adjectives of one syllable, sometimes two, add er to form the comparative and est to form the superlative. Large, add er. Actually, large already ends in e, so it's like you're adding an r, but you understand. Large, larger, and largest. Or small, smaller, smallest. The superlative form, of course, is the most extreme. So if something is the smallest, that's also superlative. For short adjectives that end in a single vowel plus a consonant, double the consonant before you add the er or the est. Let's look at some examples. Fat is the word that we had started with. A is the single vowel. T is the ending single consonant. So we're going to double that T, F-A-T-T-E-R, for the comparative, and F-A-T-T-E-S-T for the superlative. And how about thin, the opposite of fat? I is the vowel, N is the ending consonant. We double that N to make thinner, T-H-I-N-N-E-R, and T-H-I-N-N-E-S-T for the superlative, thinnest. Now, here's another rule. For short adjectives that end in the letter Y, change the Y to an I before you add the ER or the EST. Heavy, meaning something that is weighty, that weighs a lot, or that is weighted down, like someone's heavy mood. H-E-A-V-Y. Well, H-E-A-V-I-E-R, change that Y to an I, is the comparative form, heavier. And H-E-A-V-I-E-S-T is the superlative, heaviest. It was the heaviest box I have ever lifted. And how about noisy? That means obviously loud, making a lot of noise. The rock band was noisy, but the one next door is noisier, and the one behind us is the noisiest rock band of all. N-O-I-S-I-E-R or E-S-T. Now, for adjectives of 3 syllables or more, use the word more to form the comparative and most to form the superlative. For example, the adjective independent, meaning self-reliant, meaning someone or something that is able to operate without a lot of support from others. Independent is what? 4 syllables. So, independent, more independent. Kelsey is more independent than Clayton. And then the most independent. Kelsey is one of the most independent girls I know. That's the superlative, more and most. We often use the, don't always have to. Or how about delicious, a word that means something that tastes wonderful. We say is delicious. This pie is delicious. But this cake is more delicious. And in fact, this chocolate pudding is the most delicious of all 3. Let's go back to that little sentence, that little series that I started with. When I said I think this will be a productive way, it will be more productive than, it will be the most productive lesson, and so on. Because I want to explain to you about 2-syllable adjectives can go either way. That way is a very nice way. 2-syllable adjectives, in other words, sometimes some of them add ER and EST. Others you have to use more and most. Some even can be a choice of either. These you just have to learn, but let me show you a couple examples. Let's take productive out of there. And what if I thought that this would be a stupid way to use our time? In fact, this will be stupider than a lot of other things we could do. It's probably the stupidest lesson we could study in this unit. Stupid, stupider, and stupidest. Stupid, 2 syllables, right? But what if I thought it was a helpful way to use our time? In fact, this will be more helpful than a lot of other things we could do. It's probably the most helpful lesson we could study in this unit. So there are 2 examples of 2-syllable adjectives that are used these 2 different methods of forming comparative and superlative. In fact, you could say it was more stupid and it's the most stupid lesson. That's also something you could do. These, again, you just have to learn, listen for them, and you have to memorize them. That's all there is to it. Now, let's take a look at some 2-syllable adjectives really quickly. Funny, F-U-N-N-Y, funnier, and the funniest. Pretty, prettier, and the prettiest. Silly, sillier, the silliest. But adult when it's used as an adjective. Now, An adult, a noun, is an older person, a mature person, right? Someone over 18 or whatever is the way we judge that. For example, it can be used as an adjective. An adult movie, for example, is a movie made for adults or that has themes that children wouldn't understand. Adult behavior means acting in an adult way, a grown-up way, we say a lot. So it was more adult or the most adult. Here's one you could not say adulter or adultist. It was more adult behavior than had been demonstrated by someone else. It was the most adult behavior. But watch out. Never use more and the ER ending at the same time. Let me show you an example of this. Margot is more prettier than the receptionist. No, 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 never, never, never. You can never say more prettier, more nicer, more sillier, or anything else. That is always wrong. What's correct? Margot is prettier than the receptionist. Little caution there. Now, how about if something is less than something else? Not more, but less. You understand? More, less. Funny, less funny, and the least funny is the superlative. Silly. Well, that was silly, but that was a little bit less silly, and that is the least silly of the three. So, less is the comparative, the least is the superlative. Attractive. Less attractive and the least attractive. Adult. Less adult and the least adult. That was the least adult movie I've ever seen. It was so stupid. Okay? So, now, how about the comparative and the superlative form of adverbs? Fast, for example, used as an adverb. He drives fast. She drives faster. But she drives the fastest. Okay, or drives fastest. Faster is the comparative. Fastest, of course, is the superlative. The man runs fast. Here's our example. The horse runs faster, but the tiger runs fastest. For most adverbs, add ER to form the comparative and EST to form the superlative, just like the adjectives, right? For example, quick, quicker, and quickest. The little mouse moves quickest when it's being chased by a cat. Or the opposite, slow. Slower and slowest. For adverbs that end in ly, use more and most. We had heavy as an adjective. Well, here's heavily. She walks heavily. Her mother walks more heavily, but her mother walks the most heavily, walks most heavily of the three. Noisily, more noisily, most noisily. Okay. Now, let's watch the dialogue from this unit in which David and Monica plan an evening out. And what I'd like you to do when you're watching this is to listen for the examples of comparative and superlative constructions in what they're saying. Okay, watch with me. Right?
I was wondering if you'd like to dine with me tomorrow evening.
I would love to. What should I wear?
Something special?
Is this a special occasion?
Yes, darling. It's going to be very special. Which would you prefer? Fancy restaurant or dinner on a cruise line?
I think I prefer dinner on a cruise line. It would be much more romantic than a restaurant. But I would enjoy either one as long as I'm with you.
That's very nice of you to say so. I feel the same way. And I think you're right. Dining on a cruise line is much more romantic than a restaurant.
Okay. They spend more of their time in that cafeteria, don't they? So, now, let's go over a couple of the lines that they spoke to each other, of the things they said to each other, and take a look. Which would you prefer, says David, a fancy restaurant or dinner on a cruise line? Funny, because she's Monica Cruz, isn't she? She says, I think I'd prefer dinner on a cruise line. It would be much more romantic than a restaurant. Well, more romantic than, you understand. Take a look at that word much. We'll be talking about that in a few minutes. Much more romantic than a restaurant. And then David agrees, right? I think you're right. Dining on a cruise line is much more romantic than a restaurant. Much more romantic. Now, the other dialogue I'd like to look at again is when Monica goes to the Glendale Galleria to shop for a dress to go on this romantic dinner. Let's watch.
I don't know. What do you think?
This gown is from our most recent European collection.
Is that so? But don't you think it's a little long?
Hemlines are a little longer this year than last year.
I see.
What's the occasion?
I don't know, but I think it's something very special.
Well, in my opinion, this is the most beautiful gown in our collection.
It's certainly the most beautiful dress I've ever seen.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit card, thank you.
Okay. My, that sales clerk looks just like my student Tracy that I used to have to teach English to. Okay, now, what happens in this interaction? This gown, says the clerk, is from our most recent European collection. Our most recent. That means the latest. Our most recent European collection. Is that so, says Monica? But don't you think it's a little long, using little in this case to qualify long, long meaning the length of the dress, of the hemline. And what does the clerk say? Hemlines are a little longer this year than last year. Longer this year than last year. Okay, see how that construction works? Well, in my opinion, she says later, it's the most elegant dress in the collection. Elegant is a wonderful adjective that means in the highest style, probably expensive, but something that, not always expensive, but it's always in perfect taste. It's elegant. Yes, it's certainly the most beautiful dress I've ever seen, says Monica. The most beautiful dress I have ever seen, right? Using what? Right, the present perfect tense. Okay, so very good. Thank you very much, television, for helping us out here. Now, I'd like to go back and look a little bit more closely at the construction from that first dialogue. To compare adjectives or adverbs in the comparative form, use much. Okay, remember he said it's much more romantic? For example, here, tigers run faster than human beings. Look at that guy. He's not running very fast. Oh! Hey, tigers run much faster than human beings, don't they? I'll say. Tigers run faster than human beings. They run much faster than human beings. So here is a way of making different degrees of faster within that comparison. Tigers run much faster than human beings. With longer modifiers, add much before more. It would be much more romantic than a restaurant. Much more romantic. You see that? Now, again, that word than is the word that we use so often in this comparative construction. More, then we use the adjective or the adverb, than. For example, Tron, who is another of my ESL students, is more fluent in English than Paulo, right? Tron speaks English more fluently than Paulo. That's the adverb, right? He is more fluent in English. That's the adjective, fluent. Speaks more fluently, the adverb, which you know we often add ly to the end of an adjective, and we've got an adverb. And less, it's the same thing, less than, with the adverb or the adjective in between. Paulo is less fluent in English than Tron. Paulo speaks English less fluently than Tron. Implied in that, than Tron does, or than Tron speaks English, right? And what about, though, comparing equals, as I began by telling you? Tron and Paulo both speak fluent English. Let's say that Paulo improves to the point where he speaks English fluently also. So if Tron and Paulo both speak fluent English, we use the construction as, adjective or adverb, and as. Tron is as fluent as Paulo. Paulo speaks as fluently as Tron. You see that? As and as. Let's look at one more example. Here are two girls, Tanisha and Sylvia. Now, who is the more beautiful? The more beautiful of these two girls. They're actually both equally beautiful, right? So, Tanisha is as beautiful as Sylvia. That's the adjective. Sylvia is as attractive as Tanisha. Another word we use to talk about someone who looks really nice, right? As attractive as. These are the adjectives. How about the adverbs? Tanisha dresses as beautifully as Sylvia. Sylvia sings as sweetly as Tanisha. As, adjective or adverb, as. Got it? Let's see. Let's do some exercises. We will do these as quickly as we can. Now, look at the pictures and make comparisons. Here we have our three friends here, our three men. Actually, two boys and a man, aren't they? And let's start with the adjective tall. We have Michael, Adam, and Peter. Adam is blank than Michael. Okay? We're comparing two boys here, so we're going to use what? The comparative. Adam is taller than Michael. We add the ER. Peter is blank blank of the three. We're comparing three things. Peter is clearly taller than the other two. So Peter is the tallest of the three. Peter is blank blank than Michael, right? Now look, here Michael is very, very short because he's very young. And Peter is, considerably taller. So what are we going to say? Peter is comparison, within the comparison to show something that's even more, much taller than Michael. Okay, so there's our model. Let's try some more. Now how about old? Adam is blank than Michael. You tell me. Adam is older than Michael. Peter is blank blank of the three. Superlative. Peter is the oldest of the three. And Peter is blank blank than little Michael, right? Peter is much older than Michael. Let's do another. How about young? Okay, Adam is blank than Peter. Adam is younger than Peter. Michael is blank blank of the three. Michael is the youngest of the three. Michael is blank blank than Peter. Much younger than Peter. Okay? Now, how about trying one of these with an adverb? In this case, formally dressed. Formally here is an adverb that modifies the adjective dressed. Okay? You can say someone is well-dressed. Formally dressed means dressed up. Dressed, in this case, what? Peter is obviously wearing a business suit with a tie or a sport jacket and pants. And really formally is a tuxedo, right? Like to a fancy wedding or the opera. But he is certainly, what? Blank, blank, formally dressed of the three. Peter is the most formally dressed of the three. Michael is blank, blank, blank than Peter. Okay? Now what about this? Comparative form, Michael and Peter, but not as formally dressed would be what? Michael is, remember that word? Less formally dressed than Peter. And how about Adam? Adam, who's wearing shorts, right, is blank, 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 blank than who? Than Peter. Adam is blank, 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 blank than Peter. What's that word we use for degree? We use it along with the not as comparative word. Adam is much less formally dressed than Peter. Got that? You'll catch on if you haven't got it quite yet. These are tricky. Okay, here are three sisters, Betty, Jean, and Mary. Betty is happy, and her sisters are unhappy. Let's take a look at these sentences. Betty is blank blank of the three sisters, okay? Betty's happy and her sisters are unhappy. Betty is the happiest of the three sisters. Change the Y and happy to an I before you add that EST. Betty is blank blank than Jean or Mary. Okay? Betty is blank blank than Jean or Mary. Much happier, right? Betty is happier than Jean or Mary. She's also much happier than Jean or Mary. And Jean is blank, 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 Mary. See, Jean and Mary both are what? Unhappy. So we're comparing equals, clue. Jean is blank, 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 Mary. Well, unhappy is certainly the adjective that describes them both. Blank, unhappy, blank. Jean is as unhappy as Mary. Okay, you got that? A quick word about Betty is much happier than Jean or Mary. Jean or Mary. So it's as if you're comparing Betty to Jean and comparing Betty to Mary. That's why even though the three names are there, we use the comparative. Much happier than. And if you have the than, it's always comparative, little clue. You can't say it's most happier than, right? Or most happiest than. It doesn't make any sense. Now, here are three friends, Juan, Mark, and Ted. Ted looks kind of clueless, doesn't he? Juan is really muscular, right? And let's take a look at these sentences. Juan is blank, blank, blank of the three men. Muscular is our adjective. Obviously, it comes from the noun muscle. And Juan is blank, blank, blank of the three men. Superlative, the most muscular of the three men. We use most because it is a muscular, 3 syllables. He is blank, blank than Mark. Juan, of course, is blank, blank than Mark. Comparative. He is more muscular than Mark. Mark is blank, blank than he is. Juan is more muscular than Mark. Mark is blank, blank than he is. What? Less muscular. Both Juan and Mark are blank, blank, blank than Ted. Both Juan and Mark are blank, blank, blank than Ted. Both Juan and Mark are much more muscular than Ted. You see that? Now, let's look at some adverbs with these guys, or one adverb anyway. Regularly. Juan works out regularly. Do you understand that two-word verb? That phrasal verb, we sometimes call those two-word verbs. Juan works out regularly. To work out is a two-word verb that means to go to the gym, lift weights, exercise in a way that does what? Build muscle. Obviously, Juan is a body builder. He works out regularly. Now, let's take a look at these other guys. Juan works out blank, blank than the other two men. Than must be comparative. Juan works out blank, blank than the other two men. Juan works out more regularly than the other two men. Both Juan and Mark work out blank, blank, blank than Ted. Both Juan and Mark work out blank, blank, blank than Ted. Much more regularly than Ted, right? Ted, he works out blank, blank, blank of the three of them. Okay? Remember, our superlative for this less than, right? He works out blank, blank, blank of the three of them. Ted works out the least regularly of the three of them. Juan works out the most regularly. Ted works out the least regularly. Understand? Okay. So from monumental biceps, we go to monuments, pyramids, temples, Egypt, Greece, and the USA. Here's our sentence. Egypt has an ancient culture. Ancient is an adjective that means very, very, very old, right? Thousands of years old, millennia. Egypt has an ancient culture. Egypt culture is blank blank than Greece's. Egypt's culture is blank blank than Greece's. Implied what? Than Greece's culture. Blank blank. Egypt's culture is more ancient than Greece's. Both Egypt and Greece are blank 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 than the United States. Both Egypt and Greece are much more ancient than the United States, right? The United States is blank 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 of the three countries. The United States is superlative form for not as much, right? So the United States is the least ancient of the three countries. And one more. Greece is almost blank 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 Egypt. Okay. Greece is almost blank 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 Egypt. Greece is almost, not quite, but almost, qualifier of this equality, as ancient as Egypt. See it? Good. Now, with this, with these three, let's do. Actually, let's just go on to the comparative and superlative forms of the adjectives. I'll give you the adjective, you give me the comparative and superlative forms. Fat, comparative, fatter, superlative, fattest. Okay, got the idea? Let's go on. Cold, comparative, colder, superlative, coldest. Let me hear you. Good, comparative, better, superlative, best. Old, comparative, older, superlative, oldest. Silly, comparative, sillier, superlative, silliest. That's the silliest thing I've ever heard. Sad, comparative, sadder, superlative, saddest. And how about bad? Watch out. Comparative, worse, superlative, worst with a T. W-O-R-S-E is worse, the irregular comparative form of bad. W-O-R-S-T is the superlative form of bad. Did you remember that? Now, give the comparative and superlative forms of the adverb. Ready? Carefully. The comparative form is more carefully. Good. And how about the superlative form? The most carefully. How about intelligently? She answered the question very intelligently. Her roommate, however, answered the question comparative. More intelligently. And her roommate's sister answered the question superlative. The most intelligently of all. How about expensively? She was expensively dressed. Comparative? more expensively. And superlative, the most expensively. Now, how about the negative form of these comparative and superlative? Carefully, not quite as carefully would be what? Less carefully. And how about the superlative of that negative? The least carefully. Good. Intelligently, comparative. Less intelligently, superlative. The least intelligently. Expensively, comparative. Less expensively, superlative. The least expensively. Good. Okay? Now, let's move on to a little story we're going to invent here about how Donna and Monica go shopping. Remember in the last book when they went to the Glendale Galleria and Donna was looking for a brooch, right? Remember what you know what a brooch is? Here, let me show you. A brooch, in this case a small brooch, is a little item of jewelry that a woman wears often around her neck, or actually sometimes also on, it's also going to be worn on a dress, pinned on. It's a small little piece. Often it's like a locket that you can look inside of. Donna says, yes, I'm looking for a small brooch. The clerk says, I think you'll like this one. It's very small. Donna says, don't you have a smaller one? The clerk says, no, I'm afraid not. This is the smallest one we have. Donna says, but that one looks smaller than this one. Monica says, it's certainly the smallest brooch I've ever seen. Now we're going to change that dialogue a little. We're going to go on. The clerk says, oh, but they're the same. That one is every bit as small as the other one. She's trying to say they're equal, right? And Donna says, no, you're mistaken. This one is much smaller than that other one. Okay, so now guess what we're going to do? We're going to substitute phrases, adjectives, modifying nouns, and we're going to put them in the blanks. Okay, so big hat. Donna says, yes, I'm looking for a big hat. The clerk says, I think you'll like this one. It's very big, just the simple adjective, right? Don't you have a blank one, says Donna, comparative form? Bigger one? No, I'm afraid not, says the clerk. This is the one we have, superlative. Biggest one we have. But that one looks blank, blank. This one, says Donna. That one looks bigger than this one. Monica, it's certainly the blank, blank I've ever seen. It's certainly the biggest hat I've ever seen, says Monica. But they're the same, says the clerk. That one is every bit blank, blank, blank this one. As big as this one. No, you're mistaken, says Donna. This one is blank, 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 that other one. This one is much bigger than that other one. Okay, you think you can do this with another one? Old clock. Donna says, I'm looking for an, notice the article changes, old clock. I think you'll like this one. It's very old. Don't you have an one? Older. I'm expecting you're shouting out these words for me there at home or wherever you are, in the classroom, wherever you are. No, I'm afraid not. This is the one we have. Oldest. But that one looks, this one. That one looks older than this one. It's certainly blank, blank, blank I've ever seen, says Monica. The oldest clock I've ever seen. But they are the same, says the clerk. That one is every bit blank, blank, blank the other one. As old as the other one. Donna, no, you're mistaken. This one is blank, blank, blank that other one. This one is much older than that other one. Okay, lightning round. Fast computer. Donna, yes, I'm looking for a fast computer. I think you'll like this one. It's very fast. Don't you have a blank one? Faster. No, I'm afraid not. This is the blank one we have. Fastest. But that one looks blank, blank. This one, faster than this one. It's certainly the blank, blank I've ever seen. It's certainly the fastest computer I've ever seen. Oh, but they're the same. That one is blank, every bit blank, blank, blank. The other one, as fast as. No, you're mistaken. This one is blank, 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 that other one. Much faster than that other one. Go on. Here we go. Good radio. Watch out, it's irregular, right? I'm looking for a good radio. I think you'll like this one. It's very good. Don't you have a one? Don't you have a better one? No, I'm afraid not. This is the blank one we have. This is the best one we have. But that one looks blank, blank, this one. Better than this one. It's certainly the blank, blank I've ever seen. It's certainly, says Monica, the best radio I've ever seen. But they're the same. That one is every bit blank, blank, blank the other one. That one is every bit as good as, back to the original adjective. No, you're mistaken. This one is blank, blank, blank the other one. This one is much better than the other one. Got it? Let's go on. Interesting book. Yes, Donna says, I'm looking for an interesting book. I think you'll like this one. It's very interesting. Don't you have a blank one? Blank, blank one, really, right? 3 syllables, so interesting. 4 syllables. Don't you have a more interesting one? No, I'm afraid not. This is the blank, blank book we have. Most interesting. But that one looks blank, blank this one. That one looks more interesting than blank, 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 right? This one. It's certainly the blank, blank, blank I've ever seen. It's certainly the most interesting book I've ever seen. But they're the same. That one is every bit blank, blank, blank the other one. That one is every bit as interesting as the other one. No, you're mistaken. This one is blank, blank, blank than the other one. Much more interesting than that other one. Oh, and how about this? A gorgeous palace. The cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces. Yes, I'm looking for a gorgeous palace. Gorgeous means so beautiful, you can't even believe it. Oh, it was gorgeous. I think you'll like this one. It's very gorgeous. Don't you have a blank, blank one? Don't you have a more gorgeous one? 2 syllables, you have to use more with this one. Gorgeouser doesn't work. No, I'm afraid not. This is the blank blank one we have. This is the most gorgeous one we have. But that one looks blank blank this one. Blank 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 this one actually, right? That one looks more gorgeous than this one. It's certainly the blank 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 I've ever seen, says Monica. Easy to please. It's certainly the most gorgeous palace I've ever seen. But they're the same. That one is every bit blank, blank, blank. This one. That one is every bit as gorgeous as the other one. No, you're mistaken. This one is blank, blank, blank than blank, other one. This one is much more gorgeous than that other one. Okay, good. Lightning rounds are over. Now we'll just have a couple more exercises before we're done. Now, make a sentence using much and the comparative form of the adverb. Okay, follow this example. We've got this. These are the elements of our sentence. David, drive fast, and John. And we're going to use much in the comparative form of the adverb, right? So, David drives much faster than John. See how that works? There's your example. Now you do the next one yourself. Monica dance well, and David. So the other model was, remember, David drives much faster than John. So in this case, Monica dance well, and David. Ready? Okay, how'd you do? Monica dances much better than David. Got that? Much, comparative form of good is, or well rather, is better, and than David. Much better than David. How about this one? Okay, here are the elements of our sentence. Shakespeare, write poetically, adverb poetically. Obviously that means in a poetic way. And Hemingway. And please put this into the simple past tense. Shakespeare, write, past tense, poetically, Hemingway. How'd you do? Shakespeare wrote much more poetically than Hemingway. Of course, Hemingway wrote prose most of the time, so can't blame him for that, right? Shakespeare wrote much more poetically than Hemingway. How about this? Here we have Donna, clean, fast, and Kelsey. Donna cleans, remember that S for third person singular, much faster than Kelsey. Donna cleans much faster than Kelsey cleans. Donna cleans much faster than Kelsey does. Those are implied. Kelsey, play quietly, Clayton. Okay? Kelsey plays much more quietly than Clayton. Got it? Okay, now let's do the same thing with our adjectives, right? And this time we'll use the superlative form. So make a sentence using the superlative form of the adjective. Follow this example. Small brooch is our adjective and noun. And this is the sentence. It's the smallest brooch I have ever seen. It's the smallest brooch I have ever seen. Okay? Expensive car. Model was, it's the smallest brooch I have ever seen. Expensive car will be what? It's the most expensive car I have ever seen. I hope this is the best lesson I've ever taught and the best review of adjectives and adverbs that you've ever had. Thanks again for joining me here to learn your English